Chapter 1. Commander Sarah Alvarez stood at the bridge of the Federation's flagship, staring out into the endless void of space. The hum of the ship's engine was a constant presence, a low vibration that seemed to mirror the uncertainty settling in her chest. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the dark expanse, watching the swirling clusters of stars flicker in the distance. It was a haunting sight, beautiful yet alien, the calm before the storm. The Federation's fleet was the pride of humanity, a beacon of progress and unity in a galaxy that often seemed hostile and unforgiving. But today, despite all the technological advancements, the sleek starships, and the sheer might of the Federation's military force, Sarah felt an unfamiliar weight pressed down on her. The calm didn't feel like peace. It felt like a fragile lull before the inevitable chaos that would soon erupt. "Commander," Lieutenant Clark's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood beside her, his expression serious. "Intel reports indicate a significant movement from Zarkon territory. We may be facing a fleet as large as our own." Sarah didn't respond immediately. Her hand tightened around the cold, smooth railing in front of her. The Zarkon Empire. The name itself was enough to chill the spine. A ruthless species, their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, and their military was a nightmare. An unrelenting force that had brought countless civilizations to their knees. She had seen it firsthand. "How much time?" she finally asked, her voice steady but with a hint of something else lurking beneath. Fear. She wasn't immune to it, not completely. Clark hesitated. "A few hours. They're advancing an alarming pace." Sarah nodded. She had suspected as much. The Zarkons weren't known for subtlety. When they attacked, they did it with overwhelming force. And that was the problem. Humanity had always been on the defensive. It had been almost a decade since the first attack, and each day had been spent preparing for the inevitable strike. Now, that moment had arrived. Her mind flashed back to the first time the Zarkons had come to Earth's doorstep. It wasn't a battle like any other she had fought. It had been something more. It was personal. Her brother, Jack, the one person who had always believed in her, who had seen beyond her stoic exterior to the person she had hidden inside. He was on the front lines of the first skirmish with the Zarkons, and his death was a wound that never fully healed. The pain, the anger, it had never left her. That anger had become a driving force, a fire that burned through her veins every time she saw a Zarkon ship, every time she heard Korlak's name. Korlak, the supreme strategist of the Zarkon Empire, the architect of humanity's suffering. "Commander," Clark's voice cut through her reverie again, more urgent this time. Sarah snapped back to reality, her jaw tightening. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "Full alert. Get the briefing to the senior commanders. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Clark nodded, already moving to relay the orders. Sarah watched him go, then turned her gaze back to the stars. She had been in countless battles, faced enemies both human and alien. But something about this felt different. The Zarkons had always been a distant threat, their battles waged on the fringes of space. But now, they were coming for Earth. The weight of that knowledge settled like a stone in her gut. "Captain, ready the starfighter squadron," Sarah called to the officer overseeing the fleet's fighter wings. "We'll need them for reconnaissance and hit-and-run tactics." "Aye, Commander," the captain replied without hesitation. The fighter squadron was one of the best in the fleet, skilled in agile combat and quick strikes. But even they wouldn't stand a chance if the Zarkons brought their full might to bear. A quiet buzz filled the room as the tactical display updated with new intel. The Zarkon fleet had moved into Federation space, and their forces were more formidable than ever. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she examined the ship's readouts. They were fast, equipped with advanced weaponry, cloaking devices, energy weapons, and shields that could withstand all but the most direct attacks. This wouldn't be like the previous skirmishes. "Commander," a new voice came from behind her. It was Lieutenant Vera, her second-in-command. "We've decrypted the Zarkon message. It's from Korlak." Sarah's pulse quickened. She hadn't heard his voice in years, but she could recognize it immediately. It was smooth, calm, and far too self-assured for her liking. "Put it through," Sarah said, her voice cold. The ship's comm system crackled to life, and then Korlak's voice echoed through the room. "Commander Alvarez," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "I trust you are well. I wanted to personally inform you that your time has come to an end. Your fragile species can no longer stand in the way of the Zarkon Empire. Prepare yourself for the inevitable." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The cold fury that rose inside her was nearly overwhelming. He was taunting her, testing her resolve. The transmission continued. "We will see you soon. But I have to commend your efforts, Commander. Your tactics, your resilience, quite impressive. It almost makes me wonder why we bother with you." Almost. The message cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. For a moment, Sarah just stood there, her fingers clenched into fists at her sides. Korlak, the same voice that had haunted her nightmares for years. The same voice that had sealed her brother's fate. "We're ready," Vera said softly, her voice barely a whisper. Sarah didn't answer at first. She knew that the Federation had to respond, but the words felt hollow in her throat. What good was it to fight? What good was it to defend a world that had been ravaged by years of war? She had no answers, only the drive to survive, to protect her people at any cost. "Take us to battle stations," she said finally, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Prepare for the worst." As the crew scrambled into action, Sarah returned her gaze to the stars. There was no turning back now. The storm was coming, and it was time to face it head-on. But as the ship powered up for battle, one thought gnawed at her. Could humanity truly survive what was coming? Chapter 2, The Silence of Space, was deafening. But in the command center of the Federation flagship Argus, the air was thick with tension. Sarah stood at the helm, watching the tactical readouts on the display as the Zarkon fleet approached. The calm she had felt earlier had evaporated into something darker. Anticipation, dread, and a simmering rage. The moment she had known would come had finally arrived. "Approaching enemy fleet, Commander," Lieutenant Clark's voice broke the stillness. His eyes flicked nervously to the readouts, but he remained professional. "They're much closer than we anticipated. It looks like they're preparing to engage." Sarah didn't flinch. This wasn't the first time she had seen the Zarkons push their advantage. But it didn't make it any easier. The Zarkons were known for overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, using technology that far surpassed anything humanity had developed. Their ships were monstrous, built for destruction, and their weapons were deadly. "Ready all fighter wings," Sarah ordered, her voice unwavering. "Tell them to stay out of range until we can confirm the Zarkons' formations. We'll need them for hit-and-run tactics." "Understood," Clark replied, quickly relaying the orders. Sarah's eyes remained locked on the display as the Zarkon fleet appeared in full view. Ships that seemed to distort the very fabric of space, their sleek black surfaces gleaming with alien energy. They were here. "Commander, we're detecting cloaking technology," Vera, her second-in-command, reported from behind. "They're masking their fleet movements. We can't get an accurate lock on their positions." "Typical," Sarah muttered under her breath. "Give me a visual on their flagship." A hologram of the enemy fleet flickered to life in front of Sarah. The Zarkon flagship was massive, far larger than any ship in the Federation's arsenal. Its dark, jagged silhouette looked like a predator hovering in the vast emptiness, waiting for its prey to make a move. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. This was it, the first test. "We'll make the first move," Sarah declared, steeling herself. "Open fire on their cloaked ships. It's a long shot, but we need to send a message. They can't take us by surprise again." The crew shifted, but the tension remained thick in the air. The Federation's ships weren't built to be stealthy. They were blunt instruments designed for power, not subtlety. But they had one advantage. They were human. And while the Zarkons had technology, humanity had the will to survive. "Fire," Sarah commanded. The Argus shuddered as its massive cannons unleashed a barrage of energy. Brilliant beams of light shot out, cutting through the darkness. For a moment, there was nothing, just the void and the sound of weapons being discharged. Then, explosions erupted on the screen as one of the Zarkon ships flickered into visibility. The shot had found its mark. "We've hit one of their vessels," shouted Clark, disbelief evident in his voice. Sarah didn't smile. She didn't have time for that. The victory, however small, was fleeting. Almost immediately, two more Zarkon ships emerged from their cloaks, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Their blast shook the Argus, sending shockwaves throughout the bridge. Alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to respond. Shields holding at 40%. "Commander," Clark shouted, "get those shields back up." Sarah snapped, "Return fire. We're not going down without a fight." The Argus shuddered again as another energy blast tore through its defenses. But this time, Sarah had anticipated it. She slammed her hand on the console, a rapid sequence of commands firing through her mind. The Federation fleet, though smaller in size, had an edge in maneuverability. They could move faster than the Zarkon ships, allowing them to dodge and counterattack with precision. "Launch all fighters," Sarah commanded. "Tell them to hit their engines. We need to cripple their speed." Dozens of Federation starfighters launched from the Argus, streaking across the battlefield. They were fast, nimble, and highly maneuverable. As the fighters swarmed the Zarkon fleet, their energy weapons lashed out, striking at weak points in the enemy's ships. Sarah watched with a critical eye, her hands gripping the edge of the command chair as she analyzed the battle. The Federation fighters were doing their job, but the Zarkons weren't fighting like any conventional army. Every ship was an extension of their will, calm, calculated, and deadly. The Federation's hits seemed to barely register as their enemies' shields adapted, regenerating faster than human technology could cope. "Their shields are evolving," Vera said, her voice taut with frustration. "We're not making a dent." "Target their weapon systems," Sarah said, her mind whirring as she calculated their next move. "Focus on disabling their firepower, not their hulls. If we can take out their guns, we'll have a shot at winning this." But just as quickly as they had gained ground, the battle turned. The Zarkon flagship released a massive burst of energy, a wave of destructive power that swept through the Federation fleet like a tidal wave. The Argus rocked violently, throwing Sarah against her seat. "Shields down to 15%, Commander," Clark called out, panic rising in his voice. "We can't keep up. Hold steady," Sarah barked. "This isn't over yet. Give them everything we've got." The Federation fleet was faltering. Sarah could feel the weight of each decision pressing down on her. Every move she made, every command she gave, meant lives, her crew's lives. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "We've got a critical hit on their main weapons array," Lieutenant Vera shouted. "The flagship is exposed." Sarah didn't wait. "Focus all fire on that flagship. Now!" The Argus launched a final volley of high-powered lasers, directed at the heart of the Zarkon flagship. The attack found its mark, striking the flagship's primary weapon systems. The immense ship staggered, its shield flickering and then collapsing entirely. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like the tide had turned. The Zarkon flagship was disabled, and the Federation fleet had a chance to strike the final blow. But then, something unexpected happened. From the chaos of the battlefield, another Zarkon warship, a colossal beast, emerged from the darkness. It was unlike any ship the Federation had encountered before, larger, faster, and stronger. "They're reinforcing," Clark shouted in disbelief. "We can't fight this many." Sarah's heart sank. Their advantage had been brief. "Retreat," she ordered immediately. "Pull back to the outer perimeter. Regroup and prepare for another engagement. Get the fighters back." But it was too late. The Zarkon reinforcements were already closing in. The Argus began to fall back, but the damage had been done. The Federation fleet was battered and broken, and the Zarkons were relentless. They had lost their chance, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and the stakes had just been raised. As the Federation ships retreated, Sarah's thoughts turned to Earth. The Zarkon were coming for it, and they wouldn't stop until it was destroyed. The true battle was still ahead, and it was a fight Sarah knew would test every ounce of her strength and resolve. The storm was only beginning. Chapter 3: The silence in the briefing room was oppressive, thick with the weight of defeat. Sarah Alvarez stood at the head of the table, her fingers tapping against the cold surface of the command console. The data streams flickered in front of her, a stark reminder of just how much ground they had lost. The Federation fleet, once so confident, was now battered and broken. The Zarkon Empire had proven once again that they were more than just a threat. They were an extinction-level force. Her mind raced, but her face remained stoic. Around her, the senior commanders and tactical officers waited for her orders. They were all exhausted, their faces drawn with the toll of battle. The loss of so many ships, the destruction of critical resources, and the deadliest of all, the countless lives lost, hung heavily in the air. "Report," Sarah said, her voice steady, betraying none of the storm that raged inside her. Admiral Hendrickson, a grizzled veteran with a lifetime of war etched into his face, spoke first. "The fleet has sustained severe damage, Commander. We're down to less than half our fighting strength, and our communications network is compromised. We've lost contact with several outlying colonies. It's only a matter of time before the Zarkon push past our defenses and head straight for Earth." "We can't afford to retreat anymore," Sarah replied, her tone flat. "We don't have the luxury of time. Earth is already a target, and we need to make sure the Zarkons don't have the opportunity to regroup. We fight or we die." "Agreed," said Commander Ferris, a sharp-minded tactician. "But what do we do now? The Zarkon fleet is too advanced. We need a new strategy." Sarah nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. "We don't have the firepower to match them ship for ship," she said, pacing slowly. "But we have something they don't: human ingenuity. We need to hit them where they're weakest, disrupt their command structure, and break their momentum." There was a long pause. The weight of her words hung in the room. "I'm proposing a covert operation," Sarah continued, her voice lowering with intensity. "We infiltrate the Zarkon flagship. We need to gather intelligence, anything that can give us an edge. We may not be able to win a direct confrontation, but we can sabotage their most powerful weapon, their strategy." Lieutenant Vera, standing near the tactical display, spoke up. "Commander, a mission like that is suicide. The flagship is a fortress. We'll never get in without being detected. And if we do, we're dead the moment we're spotted." "I know the risks," Sarah said, her eyes steely. "But if we don't take them, we're condemning ourselves to defeat. We need to disrupt their command, find their weaknesses, and hit them hard. We don't just want to win, we want to cripple them. They've underestimated us before. Let's make them do it again." The room was quiet as her team absorbed her words. Every commander knew the odds. They had seen the Zarkons' might firsthand. But Sarah's conviction was undeniable. She wasn't just speaking as their leader. She was speaking from the same place they all were: desperation. Finally, Hendrickson spoke. "If anyone can pull this off, it's you, Commander. We'll give you everything you need." "Get the preparation started," Sarah ordered. "We move in 12 hours. The plan was simple in theory, but its execution would require every ounce of precision and skill the Federation's elite forces could muster. A small infiltration team would board one of the Federation's stealth ships, a sleek, fast craft designed for covert operations. They would slip through the Zarkon's outer defenses and board the flagship, extracting as much intelligence as possible before escaping undetected. Sarah had selected the team herself. Lieutenant Vera would lead the infiltration unit, a group of highly trained soldiers who specialized in covert operations. With them would be a small tech team to hack into the Zarkon systems and gather crucial data. And of course, Sarah would be going as well. She wasn't going to send her crew into the fire without being there to lead them. The launch of a stealth ship was quieter than a whisper, its engines barely humming as it made its way toward the Zarkon fleet. The Federation flagship, Argus, stayed behind, its damaged hull still in need of repairs. Sarah stood at the helm of the stealth ship, her eyes scanning the holographic interface in front of her. Vera was beside her, checking the team's equipment one last time. "Everything's in order, Commander," Vera said, her voice calm, but Sarah could tell she was just as on edge as the rest of them. "Good," Sarah replied, her fingers tapping the console in thought. "The Zarkon's cloak technology is the biggest obstacle we'll face. We'll need to be close enough to disable their shields and make our move before they even realize we're here. Vera nodded. I've studied their ships. Their cloaking device is powerful, but it's not perfect. If we hit them from the right angle, we can slip past without detection. You're the expert, Sarah said, her eyes narrowing as the Zarkon flagship came into view. It was massive, more so than Sarah had imagined. The dark, jagged form of the ship seemed to swallow the light around it, a silent predator hanging in the depths of space. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Sarah said. We get one shot at this. The stealth ship moved with precision, sliding between the cracks in the Zarkon's defenses. The cold hum of the cloaking technology was a faint comfort as they navigated the outskirts of the flagship's sensor range. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Every instinct screamed that they were too close, too vulnerable. But they had no choice. We're almost there, Vera murmured, her eyes glued to the readouts. All teams ready? Sarah asked, glancing at the small, tightly knit group behind her. Each soldier stood at attention, weapons in hand, their faces steely with determination. Ready, came a unified reply. Then let's move. They dropped from the stealth ship and into the heart of the Zarkon flagship, an enemy vessel that had been designed to be a fortress Sarah was about to infiltrate. The ship's dark halls felt like a maze of cold metal and shifting shadows. Sarah's team moved swiftly, using their training to avoid detection. They slipped through the enemy's defenses with mechanical precision. The tension was palpable. Each footstep, each breath seemed louder in the silence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the flagship, the command center. It was a vast, sterile space filled with consoles and alien interfaces. The tech team immediately began hacking into the systems, their fingers flying across the alien controls. We have access, one of the technicians said, his voice tight with concentration. Uploading now. Sarah watched the data stream across the screen. This was it, the moment that could turn the tide of the war. But just as they were about to finish, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the unmistakable sound of Zarkon soldiers filling the corridors echoed through the walls. We're compromised, Vera shouted. Move now. The team scrambled for the exit, but the Zarkons were already closing in. The fight for their survival had just begun. Chapter for the hum of the Zarkon flagship was deafening, an eerie buzz that seemed to reverberate through the cold metal corridors. Sarah Alvarez's heart pounded in her chest as she moved in sync with her team, their footsteps muffled by the sleek, foreign floor beneath them. The mission had already been compromised. The alarm was blaring, signaling that the Zarkons had discovered their presence. There was no turning back now. We need to move faster. Vera hissed, her voice urgent but controlled. She motioned for the team to keep moving, their weapons held at the ready. Sarah's mind raced. They had managed to breach the flagship's command center and access their critical systems, but now they were exposed. Data was downloading valuable intelligence that could change the course of the war, but it wasn't enough. They couldn't just get in and get out. They had to get out alive. Tech team, Sarah snapped. How long until we have what we need? One of the tech officers, a young woman named Lieutenant Mendez, looked up from her console. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her hands never stopped working. Another 2 minutes, Commander. We're almost there, but they're closing in. 2 minutes, Sarah repeated, her voice tight. It felt like an eternity. The walls of the flagship were too silent, too sterile, and the weight of the quiet made her skin crawl. Every shadow seemed to hide an enemy soldier, every turn a new threat. Move out, Sarah barked. Vera, take point. Mendez, stay with the data transfer. We'll cover you. Vera nodded, her eyes sharp. Understood. She turned and led the team down the narrow corridor. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the silence, mingling with the distant sound of the Zarkon forces advancing. They could hear the click of their boots, the metallic hiss of the doors opening, and the quiet, almost imperceptible hum of the ship's energy systems. Everything was alien. Everything was a danger. Sarah kept her weapon raised, scanning the area as they moved. Her mind kept flickering back to the stakes. Earth. Her people. She couldn't afford to fail now, not when the lives of billions rested on their success. The data they were pulling would give the Federation the edge it needed, but only if they made it out alive. As they turned a corner, a Zarkon patrol appeared in the distance. 2 soldiers, their forms hulking and imposing. The Zarkons were tall, built for war, their armor sleek and intimidating. Sarah's gut twisted. They weren't going to make it out of this one without a fight. "Engage," Sarah ordered in a low voice. Her team responded instantly. The firefight was brief but intense. The Federation soldiers fired first, their energy weapons charging the air with sharp, crackling blasts. The Zarkon soldiers retaliated with lightning speed, their weapons glowing with deadly intensity. Sarah dove to the side as a blast from a Zarkon weapon hit the wall next to her, the explosion sending debris scattering in all directions. On the left, Vera shouted, raising her rifle and firing. The shot struck one of the Zarkon soldiers square in the chest, sending him crashing to the floor. The other soldier lunged forward, his weapon raised. Sarah fired, the blast cutting through the air and striking him down with surgical precision. The sound of the Zarkon soldiers hitting the floor reverberated in the now quiet corridor. "We're moving," Sarah ordered immediately. "Keep it tight." "Mendez, status on the data?" "We've got it, Commander," Mendez said, her voice shaky but relieved. "Data is secure. We're ready to move." "Good. Let's get the hell out of here," Sarah muttered. She didn't have to say it twice. The team started moving again, adrenaline pumping through their veins, pushing them forward despite the growing risks. But they had no illusions. This was just the beginning. They had to get to the extraction point, get back to their ship. As they navigated the twisting halls of the Zarkon flagship, the heavy footfalls of more Zarkon soldiers echoed behind them. Sarah cursed under her breath. They were being hunted. The Zarkon were relentless, and every minute they spent on the ship increased their chances of being caught. "Commander, they're everywhere," Vera said, her voice grim. "We need to find another way out." Sarah's mind raced. She checked her data pad, scanning the schematics of the flagship's layout. The main hangar bay was too far, too exposed. The secondary docking bay was closer, but they would have to cross through the command center again to reach it. "Vera, take a squad to the left, secure the side passage. Mendez, stay with me. We'll head to the secondary docking bay." Vera nodded, leading a small group down another corridor. The rest of the team stayed close to Sarah, their weapons ready. They moved quickly but cautiously, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. The closer they got to the secondary docking bay, the more urgent the sounds of pursuit became. Zarkon soldiers were everywhere. Sarah's pulse quickened, her breath shallow as she pushed forward. She could hear the faint hum of their cloaking devices, Zarkon patrols, moving through the shadows. The ship was a labyrinth, and every corner seemed to bring new danger. "Commander," Mendez whispered, her voice low, "I'm seeing multiple Zarkon patrols ahead. They're closing in." "We're not turning back," Sarah said firmly. "We push forward. We don't stop. We can't afford to." The team pressed on, moving through the dimly lit corridors, their every step a gamble. Every shadow could be hiding a Zarkon soldier. Every corner could bring them face to face with the enemy. Sarah kept her breathing steady, her senses heightened. She couldn't afford to hesitate. Then, as they reached the final turn before the docking bay, they were met with an unexpected sight. Korlak himself, flanked by 2 of his elite guards. His presence was unmistakable, tall, imposing, with eyes like steel. He watched them with a calculated gaze, a faint smile curling his lips. "So, this is where you've come to," Korlak's voice echoed through the empty hallway. "I've been waiting for you, Commander Alvarez." Sarah froze, her heart leaping in her chest. The air seemed to grow thicker, charged with the tension of their encounter. For the first time, she felt the full weight of Korlak's presence. He took a slow step forward. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. You've done more than I thought possible. But you've underestimated one thing." "What's that?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the growing dread in her chest. "The Zarkon never lose," Korlak replied, his voice cold. Before Sarah could react, the 2 guards stepped forward, raising their weapons. The standoff was inevitable. The battle was about to take a much more personal turn. Chapter 5: The Final Battle. The tension was unbearable. Sarah stood face to face with Korlak, the supreme strategist of the Zarkon Empire. The corridors of the Zarkon flagship seemed to close in on her, pressing down on her chest with every breath. His tall, imposing figure towered over her, the sharp lines of his features cold and calculating. His gaze locked with hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The rest of the Federation team stood tense behind Sarah, their weapons raised, eyes darting between Korlak and his two elite guards. The silence in the hallway felt like an eternity. "You're a long way from home, Commander," Korlak said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "And yet, here you are, deep within my ship, attempting the impossible. Tell me, what drives you? Is it fear of failure? Or something deeper?" Sarah didn't flinch. She had seen too much to be intimidated now, especially not by him. The pain of losing so many comrades, the weight of her brother's death, all of it had been leading her to this moment. The stakes couldn't be higher. Earth, her people, the survival of humanity, all rested on the fragile thread of this confrontation. She drew a slow, deliberate breath. "I'm not here to talk, Korlak. I'm here to finish this." Korlak's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no humor in it. "Then let us finish it." In a flash, his two guards moved, their weapons raised with the precision of trained killers. Sarah's reflexes kicked in, her team responding instantly. A barrage of fire erupted in the narrow hallway. The sound of energy blasts filled the air as the Federation team dove for cover, their shots striking the Zarkon Guard shields but not penetrating them. Korlak remained motionless, almost disinterested. He was a strategist, and he knew exactly how this would play out. He wasn't concerned with the skirmish. He was focused on Sarah. She could feel his eyes on her, a constant pressure that made her senses flare. "Is this your best?" Korlak's voice cut through the chaos. "Your soldiers are skilled, but it won't be enough. You'll die here, Commander, and so will all of humanity." Sarah's chest tightened. She couldn't afford to let fear slip through. She fired a shot, taking out one of the Zarkon guards, and signaled for her team to advance. They pushed forward with ruthless efficiency, dodging fire and using every bit of training they had to stay alive. But the Zarkons were relentless. Every step forward felt like a struggle against the crushing weight of destiny. As the final Zarkon guard fell, the room was filled with silence. Korlak remained standing in the middle of the hallway, unscathed, his expression unreadable. "You think this changes anything?" Korlak asked, his voice low and dangerous. "You may have taken my guards, but you'll never take my fleet. My army. The war is already won." Sarah squared her shoulders, stepping closer. Her team had cleared the immediate threat, but the real battle lay ahead. Korlak wasn't just a soldier. He was the architect of the Zarkon Empire's strategy, and defeating him wasn't going to be easy. But she had one advantage: humanity's resilience. "I don't need to defeat you to win, Korlak," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I just need to stop you. You've underestimated humanity's will to survive. And that's where you're wrong." Korlak's brow furrowed, but there was no real surprise in his eyes. Instead, he stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing against the metallic floor. "You believe in your people's resolve, but resolve is nothing against the inevitable. Your so-called Federation will fall, just like all the others." Without warning, Korlak lunged, his hand extending towards Sarah. In the blink of an eye, he was upon her, his fingers aimed at her throat. The sheer speed of his movement took Sarah by surprise. She reacted instinctively, ducking under his grasp and rolling to the side. Her weapon was already raised, but she hesitated. Korlak's laugh echoed through the corridor, rich with dark amusement. "Is this how you fight, Commander? You rely on tricks, on desperation, and yet you still think you have a chance." Sarah's fingers tightened around her weapon. She couldn't let his words get to her. He wanted to break her mentally before he broke her physically. She knew that much. He wanted to make her doubt, to make her fear. But she couldn't afford that. "Not now. We fight because we have no other choice," Sarah said, her voice ringing with conviction. She raised her weapon, aiming directly at Korlak. Korlak's eyes widened slightly, an unspoken understanding flashing between them. Sarah fired. The blast hit Korlak square in the chest, but the shot deflected off his armor, sparking violently. He didn't flinch. Instead, he lunged again, his movement swift, his strike a blur. Sarah barely managed to sidestep his attack, her body moving instinctively. The force of his blow struck the floor, sending a shockwave through the ship's structure. She fired again, but Korlak was too fast, dodging the blast with ease. "You're wasting your energy," he sneered, his eyes narrowing. "You can't win." But Sarah refused to back down. Every move Korlak made was calculated, but she had something he didn't, something that couldn't be measured by strategy or strength alone. The will to fight, the fire that burned her chest. She had seen too much loss to stop now. Earth depended on her survival. "Then let's see if I can prove you wrong," Sarah muttered, determination hardening her resolve. As Korlak advanced, Sarah dropped her weapon and launched herself at him. Her hands were faster than her mind, grabbing at his weapon, a brutal contest of strength. Their bodies collided, the sound of metal against metal ringing in the air. For a moment, it seemed as though Korlak might overpower her, but Sarah's grip tightened. In that split second, she saw it, the weakness. A small gap in his armor, a vulnerable point near his chest. She had trained for this. It wasn't enough to defeat him with brute force. It was about precision. With a swift movement, Sarah maneuvered around him, using his own momentum to her advantage. She jabbed her knife into the gap in his armor, driving it deep into his side. Korlak's breath caught. His eyes widened in shock, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of something other than the cold, calculating leader he had been. Pain, vulnerability. He staggered backward, trying to regain his composure, but Sarah pressed on, not allowing him a moment's respite. She didn't care if he was the supreme strategist of the Zarkon Empire. This fight wasn't about strategy. It was about survival. With a final, swift strike, Sarah brought him to the ground, his body crumpling beneath her. She stood over him, her chest rising and falling with the effort, but there was no triumph in her gaze, only the cold, hard realization that the battle wasn't won yet. Behind her, the rest of her team began to regroup, moving toward the extraction point. Sarah took one last glance at Korlak's fallen form, the warlord who had come so close to ending everything she fought for. Then, without a word, she turned and followed her team, knowing that the battle for humanity's future was far from over.